So guys, I can't believe that I'm actually going to make this video after the shit show that the UFC Apex has been, but I think we've actually found a reason to justify its existence. A little bit of context is going to be needed on the UFC Apex. It was first introduced to pay-per-views and fight nights during the Great Overreaction. And at the time, it was actually awesome. The fights were back on the weekends. We'd never heard the fights so clearly. I mean, you could even argue that Kevin Holland's entire good start to his career was because we could hear him talking inside the cage so much. The fights themselves seemed very intimate. We were only getting pay-per-views, and the other fights that we were getting, because it was so hard to organize the fighters, we were only getting athletes that really wanted to be there. But then people started to put the toilet paper back on the shelves and we started to think clearly again. And we eventually started having fights in front of crowds, and the UFC Apex sort of became a little bit irrelevant. Now in 2023, the Apex has been the hallmark of a bad card, and all the fans online can actually agree on one thing. UFC Apex equals a shit night. But recently, on Saturday, March the 11th, the UFC put on a fight night in a small hotel theater room that held 4,000 people. And on that same night, something amazing happened. That crowd of 4,000 people seemed to be packed in around the UFC cage. When the fighters were walking out, they were almost walking through the crowd. They were touching and high-fiving the fans. It was awesome. And then as the night went on, the crowd just got louder and louder until the main event, it was deafening inside that room. And then right after that card ended, another card started down the road at the dreaded UFC Apex. I tuned into that card because why not? I don't need an excuse. It was on, I had nothing better to do. Anyway, I tuned in to watch Power Slap, and when I first started watching it, I had the same mindset that everyone else seemed to have. I thought it was just complete rubbish. But pretty much after the second slap fight, I was hooked right into it. And I noticed that the atmosphere of the UFC Apex seemed completely different that weekend. So moments before the slap happened, there's about 10 people on the stage. The people standing behind the fighters, the referee, the fighters themselves, and there's a countdown and they all have to stand very still and just wait for that moment. Now that is a very different atmosphere to a UFC fight night, where you've got that big cage in the middle of the room and you've got two fighters in there, sometimes dancing around each other for minutes at a time. So you've got the tension happening on this stage and it's slowly building until eventually there's this, and you can hear it echo off the walls. And the 200 people that are in that room waiting for that to happen go absolutely nuts. And the place sounds huge. But when an MMA is happening, the crowd seem to get lulled into a bit of a sleep. I want you to picture this now. It's ESPN UFC Apex Fight Night. There's been a first round knockout and now 200 people are sitting in that room waiting maybe 20 to 25 minutes for the next fight to start. Two bantamweights or two welterweights enter the cage and the first round kicks off. Maybe they're just feinting with each other, maybe they're grappling against the cage. Another 5 minutes pass. The round ends. They return to their corners. Another minute passes. The second round starts. Maybe they're feinting, maybe they're just peppering each other with shots for another 2.5 minutes. Until finally there is a knockdown or a knockout. Those 200 people have seemed to be lulled to sleep and the room seems almost empty. But like I said, that same room during a 1v1 fight with a countdown, those same amount of people seem to go absolutely insane. That room sounds completely different and it just brings the whole energy of the card up. I think if the UFC need to keep putting on less than spectacular cards, and I can understand why they do. They've got the biggest organization in the world, they have the best fighters in the world. They need to keep churning through to the division to find the stars, and they also need to sign the most new athletes to keep good talent on their roster. But they should leave it for prelims and put good main cards in small arenas with around 4,000 people. Now, when there is a first round knockout and you've got 4,000 people in an arena, they can generally keep themselves entertained with songs and cheering and booing. It's very hard for about 200 people to do that for half an hour in the small Apex. So the bigger arenas actually keep the energy up until the next fight starts. I think the best thing to do with the Apex when it comes to UFC is just leave it for TUF and the Contender Series when the friends and family are in there. So now that Dana has invested so much in Power Slap, it is clearly not going anywhere. And the UFC as a business have invested so much in the UFC Apex, that clearly isn't going anywhere either. I think these two things paired together are a match made in heaven. And also, Michael Bisping. Just leave him for the slap commentary. The technicality of that sport seems to go perfectly with his style of commentating. I'm very keen to hear what you guys would think. Would you keep Power Slap around if you never had to watch another fight night at the UFC Apex? Please let me know down in the comments. And also, where the hell is Colby Covington? When is he fighting again? I will see you guys in the next video.